The impact of words. Hi, I'm Anne-Margaret with this week's Sacred Sunday message to raise the vibration of your body, mind, and spirit. Thanks for joining me this morning. So, words. I know beautiful Shakespeare had a lot to say about that. We're going to dive in today to understand why words are important, and not just the ones that escape our lips, but the ones that we hold also in our minds. So let's start right away by just addressing one thing. Everyone has a certain vibration. It's a measurable frequency that we can actually measure in the body. And a healthy body has a measurable frequency between about 62 and 68 hertz. And this is important because if our energy, if our frequency dips below about 60 hertz, that is when our immune system is compromised and we start not feeling well. Well, what impacts this vibration? And obviously, I wear my raised vibration. That's who we are and what we talk about because it is rooted in science. It's rooted in a measurable vibrational frequency. When our thoughts are low or we're having low vibrational conversations about maybe it's gossip at the water cooler, if people still have water cooler conversations, or if we're talking about the fear or engaging with the fear, our fears or our concerns about the world in a way that's not empowering, in a way that is self-victimizing, that also lowers our vibration. So, what we ingest through those conversations, if we're listening to people or looking at things, maybe on social media or on specific channels on the TV, we are ingesting a lower frequency that impacts our vibration, our health, our overall well being, not just physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So, looking at this today, our focus is really examining the very real impact that words, and I'll get what's behind the words in a second, how the words impact us in a very real way, impact our well being, impact our relationships, and even impact what we conceive of as reality. So let's dive in. First quote I want to share with you is one of the most brilliant minds who's ever graced this planet, Nikola Tesla. Those of you who know him, we see the Teslas driving around everywhere. Well, guess where they got the name, okay? This guy knew what he was talking about, one of the most brilliant minds that's ever graced our planet. And he said this. Those of you who are kind of turned off by energy and talking about energy or frequency, it's time for you to kind of get over that, really, because energy is now measurable. And so if you haven't explored the term energy and you think it's just still woo-woo, there is a little leap that needs to happen, and not just a leap of faith, but maybe a leap into studying more so about how this impacts you, how this impacts your ability to be successful in your business, how this impacts your ability to be successful in your relationships and in your health. So here's Nikola Tesla's quote. If you want to find the secrets of the universe, who doesn't? Think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. I'm going to say that again. If you want to find the secrets of the universe, if you want to find them, who's asking the big questions, who has the courage to ask those big questions? If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Okay, there are books written about this. There are teachers, I mean, myself included, talking all about vibration, energy, frequency, understanding the subtlety of our world and how we exist in a way that is impacted by what we think, what we believe, what we say, how we feel, what we eat, what we drink. All right, all of these things impact our frequency. So in his book, The Body Electric, there's a Dr. Robert O. Becker is his name, and he is a brilliant mind. He released The Body Electric, and he talks in this book about how everything is frequency. And that frequency, if we're talking about what is frequency, right? We know like how to dial our radio on our radio, right? Old school radio, right? But also on our digital radio in our cars, that if you set it to a certain frequency, that's the channel, that's the program that you receive through your radio. So we're very similar. So he says in his book, and again, it's called The Body Electric, he says frequency is the measurable rate of electrical energy flow. The measurable. So it is measurable. We're not just making this up and feel good, woo woo, jump through rainbows, right? No, this is very scientific, right? And it is responsible, for electromagneticism, which is actual study of physics. It's a branch of physics that led to Einstein's discovery of the theory of relativity. So if it feels like this is going over your head, it's very, very simple. It like Hertz, and the guy who actually, that Hertz is named after, the measurement of Hertz, is responsible for that branch of physics and really creating that idea of proven measurable frequency. And really this is like the relationship of 1 cycle per second. So that's a hertz, and we talk about megahertz and gigahertz and all of that, but it is the measurable rate of electrical energy. And anyone who's ever experienced acupuncture, who's done Tai Chi, who understands the power of mantra and repeating certain words to have a certain frequency of belief system, anyone who's prayed or understands faith and how faith works and the power of intention or the true law of attraction, we're going to get into that today too, understands the impact of frequency. And what are words? Words are frequency. Right? So we understand, especially like anybody in Chinese medicine who studied acupuncture, who studied the flow of qi in the body or along the meridians, what are called the meridians in the body. And it's worked in acupuncture, it's worked in massage. It is stifled or stuck, stagnant energy. Actually, the free flowing of energy in our bodies and in our minds and even the emotional bodies that causes stagnation, and stagnation opens up the body and mind to disease, dis-ease in the body, not this free-flowing energy. So this is huge, and anybody who understands that knows the healing that can take place. Maybe some of you have experienced acupuncture. I couldn't get over the first time I experienced acupuncture. It was this thing right here. It almost felt like a nerve that was kind of being plucked, and nothing could help. I went to all these doctors, and nothing had helped, and this was probably 20 couple years ago. And I went to an acupuncture and I was all nervous because of the needle thing, right? He put in a few different needles all the way down my arm. And in, I think it was 20 minutes, it was gone. And it was actually gone even shorter. After the appointment took 20 minutes. But he put in the needles and all of a sudden I just felt something move through my arm and it was out almost instantaneously, because those needles and the stimulation of these specific meridians in our bodies actually help to keep the flow. Think about a river, right? If there's a blockage in a river, like a beaver builds a dam or an intentional dam to create more of a water source or a reservoir, you put up a stoppage to the free flowing of that water. But if the water doesn't flow enough, what happens? It gets stagnant. I know we see that in ponds and lakes, and the moss grows on top. You can't drink that water anymore, okay? So if we don't have the free flow in the energy of our body, and guess what? We're over 70% water, if you forgot. And I'll get into an experiment by Dr. Emoto, who some of you are familiar with later in this talk. But if we're not moving the energy in our bodies, that's when we get really stuck. So let's back up for a second. We're talking about the impact of words. Now, sometimes we say things in the heat of an argument and we say things that we don't mean. Anybody ever experienced that? Oh, I hate you, or this is over, or whatever it is, or like, I'm never doing this again, or I'm done. Whatever we're saying, there is heat in the moment. There is an emotional release. And yes, we can say things that we don't mean. You know why those words don't stick? Because the belief is not really behind them. It's in the heat of the moment. It's an emotional release. And I'm not saying that this is applaudable, right? This is something that if the more that we have mastery over our thoughts and our expressions, then the more masterful we can become in our communication. That even if we're feeling a surge of anger or frustration, we can catch the energy as it's in our body before it comes out of our mouths, right? So there is a mastery when it comes to communication. I'm not saying advocating for just saying whatever's there, okay? But what's important is that the belief is not behind it. The belief is not behind it. You don't really hate that person. Think of a toddler. Like, they say this all the time, I hate you, or whatever they're saying, or this isn't fair, or whatever it is, or they're experiencing what they're feeling. And then in the next moment when they're over it and the energy has released from their body, they're back to being like the little love bug, right? I mean, this is how we never really lose that need to express our energy or our emotional body, but we just learn how to do it either in very unhealthy ways of suppressing it or holding it in or not releasing it, and it becomes stagnant within us, or we learn how to masterfully express ourselves. Okay, so what happens though if you say something you don't really mean it, but it sticks in the other person? All right, you've apologized and they're still holding on to it. That's because when things are said to us, and let's take it in the first person so we're not thinking about hypotheticals and others, because that's not really helpful for our own growth. And we're here on Sacred Sunday for our own growth. That if somebody says something to us and you know they didn't really mean it, but then you also are like, well, but they said it and it hurts. Maybe where you need to look at is within you. Is there something about you that believes that you are that way? Or something that fears that that is in the relationship? And that's where you need to go do the healing, all right, within yourself. Repair that wound. That's what we call triggers, right? Things that are wounds that are never healed within us, within our belief system, within our bodies, within our minds. So if we heal them ourselves, when other people say stuff about us that we know isn't true about us, or we know isn't true about how we operate, it's not going to stick. It's not going to stick because we have the self-awareness. We've done the healing that we need to let that person just have their expression and not feel like we need to go fix it or apologize or, right a wrong that we never did, okay? This happens all the time. You know what I'm talking about. So why is vibration important? I'm going to talk about something here too, because we know words have vibration. We know words, when they have belief systems behind them, even have stronger vibrations. Why? Neurologically, in our literal brain, what happens when we have a thought is a firing of what's called a synapse. A synapse, an electrical message that if it's fired and it also has belief or emotion or conviction, another synapse also fires, like our emotional response, our emotional triggers, right? If they fire together, that synapse actually wires together, what's called wires together, meaning it kind of becomes entangled, it becomes even stronger. And this is how we shape our belief system. So when we come into this world, and I know I'm covering a lot here, but stay with me. When we come into this world, we get indoctrinated into what we call our second nature. We have this very free, open, really loving, really expressed. We're the center of our universe as a child, right? And then we slowly adopt this second nature through being accepted or indoctrinated into our close circles. We adapt to what is expected of us in order to get to play or get the treat or get the toy or to not get the scolding or the beating, right? And so we learn how to operate or in accordance with a reward system. And if we don't examine what that second nature is as an adult, then we'll never reach the freedom of a free will, sovereign, chosen, what I refer to as a third nature. Something that we actually sculpt ourselves consciously rather than just react to or unconsciously let lead our lives or dictate our expression or our belief system based on that early indoctrination. All right, this is self-knowledge, this is self-awareness. So let's talk about the law of attraction. Many times we hear this law of attraction teaching of, oh, it's just about feeling good. It's just about feeling good. Just reach for the highest feeling. All right, just speak the highest words, because those have vibration. If your belief system is discordant with what you're saying, and we all know what that feels like when we're taught mantra for the first time, because mantra, and that's just a simple word that says, because mantra, any word can be intimidating, like anything in Sanskrit or a foreign language or something that we don't understand in the medical field until we understand what the word actually means, and then we can go, oh, okay, I got it. So mantra is just something you say over and over again that shapes your belief system. And then that belief system determines what you consider as reality. This is critical as we think about the law of attraction. Here's why. If we take the very simple formula, what we think over and over and over again, this can be positive, it can be uplifting, or it can be disempowering, right? What we think over and over again becomes our belief system. What we believe about ourselves, others, the world, being human, what's necessary, what's possible, what's not possible. It shapes everything. Our thoughts, okay? What do our thoughts consist of? Our words, how we're thinking, what vibration we're holding, what emotional vibration we're holding with those words in our mind, even if we never say them. Some of us are really good at buttoning our lips, but we're stewing inside, okay? So it has a very impactful, uh, um, outcome on our well-being. So if what we think over and over again shapes our belief system, and that belief system, what we believe about the world, what's possible and what's not possible, actually determines our reality, what our version of reality is. You know that you live in a very different reality from your neighbor, from maybe a sibling, from some family member or a friend, that you believe in something that they may not. And as a result, because of your belief in that, you get a different reality. You think something's possible and they don't, or you don't think something's possible and they do, and you're like, man, how do they do that? Like, how do they attract that reality? I could never do that. Well, that's another belief, right? So when we talk about the law of attraction, too few of us realize the scientific explanation for why it works. I just went over a few things of how it works, but most misinterpret these teachings, and it's more of an oversimplification of a demand of oneself to just feel good, right? But in reality, this adjustment of our vibration takes such deep diving. It takes such deep work of facing all aspects of ourselves, looking at things we don't want to necessarily look at, being afraid of what we're going to find if we start down that road of self-exploration. If we start with a coach, right? Every single one of my clients as a coach, and this is also was the case with me at the beginning of this process over 20 years ago, they face one very common fear. Every single one of them. Guess what it is? It's the fear of what they're going to find. Our fear of the unknown is so much greater than facing a challenging reality. Think about those of you who don't check your bank account because you're like, I don't even want to know. That's actually worse than looking at your bank account on a regular basis and establishing a relationship, or having that difficult conversation with your spouse because you just don't want to know, like you're intuiting something, or with your child. All right, the fear of the unknown, of what we might find, is something that keeps us held back from freedom. All right, it keeps us from accessing the unconscious mental patterning from these false beliefs about ourselves, about our loved ones, about the world. And this really results in a superficial, short-lived experience of joy. We can't access that deep wellspring of joy or deep intimacy with one another, with ourselves, with God, with our work, with our purpose, unless we're willing to go deep. And that takes energy, it takes courageousness, and it also takes a deep commitment to overcome that fear of what you might find. Trust me, every single one of my clients, every single time I had that fear, when I faced it and overcame it, the result was so much greater. What I got, my ROI, right? My return on investment. It's like you business owners out there, you know what I'm talking about. When you face something and you take a risk and you go into that fear and you do it, and you have the courage to do it, the return is so much greater than just sitting on the sideline and looking at the game unfolding and everybody else is playing it, in great relationships, successful in their own business, living out their dreams, facing their deeper aspects of themselves that they're afraid to face. They're finding their freedom and you're sitting on the sideline going, oh man, that's the FOMO, right? The fear of missing out. So we need to remember that courage is so critical, but every time we face that fear of the unknown, man, what we find is so rich and so rewarding. All right, so that's the law of attraction. So let's talk about real quick before I finish this up today, the impact of the words in relationship to an experiment by Dr. I think it's Masaru Emoto, amazing Japanese researcher. You might have heard of this experiment. What he did was he conducted experiments on water and measuring the impact of words on water molecules or crystals. So he filled up canisters of water, and then he put words on like love and gratitude, or I'm so grateful, or thank you, like words or phrases that are very uplifting, that promote feeling of well-being, of high vibrational energy, okay, and measurable frequency. Remember, that's what we're measuring. And then on the other canisters of water, he put words like idiots or evil or you're worthless, these kind of negative messages that all of us actually have in our brains. Maybe we heard them from someone else, or it's a belief system, a false belief system about ourselves, okay? And what he did was he froze these canisters, and then under a microscope, he looked at the water molecules in their frozen states. Now, when we think of frozen water, we think of like snowfall and like snowflakes and these beautiful crystals and everything like that, right? So guess what happened? When he looked at under the microscope of the empowering words, he found perfectly balanced, harmonious crystals that were perfectly in balance. Like they were it's almost like they had this incredible symmetry and relatedness of harmonious relatedness. All right. When he looked at the disempowering words under the microscope, he found that they were disjointed. There was chaos. Like there was no organization or sacred geometry. If you've watched my talk on sacred geometry, that explains more what that means. And there was also like, it almost looked like a sick sort of like yellowish rim around us. So he proved in this experiment how much of an impact the words that we think, the words that we say, the music we listen to, he did experiments with music, the impact that that has on our bodies, because we're mostly water. So what do we do with this is learning, like, what's the power of a declaration? We think about why people get married and declare in front of all their friends and family. Words spoken, I will do this, or I love you, or I love myself, or I believe in you, and let those thoughts be in our minds. It's what we're loyal to, the words and the beliefs that make so much of a difference in our world, in our reality, in our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. And the Declaration of Independence, how we started this country, declaring something is true. We do it all the time with our thoughts. It's so important to remember that we are mindful of what those thoughts are and those words that we're keeping in our brain, and we're mindful of what we're saying with that as well. So guys, thanks so much for joining me today, and if you feel like somebody could benefit from this, please feel free to share this video. And until next time, you know what to do. Keep raising the vibration. All right, thanks everybody.